Hey there everyone, welcome to Tales in Text and I'm your host Nisha Prakash and this is Bite Size Bharata where you hear tiny tales from a grand epic. Our story starts with Satyavati continuing her tale. Now that she has spoken about her birth and parentage, Satyavati reveals to Shantanu about a time in her life that was challenging and rewarding. She takes a deep breath and continues. O King, as I grew up, my bodily odor intensified and I began smelling more strongly of fish. Even for the fisherfolk community, who spent their entire lives in water and amongst the creatures nestled in its depths, my bodily odor was just too much to bear. Other children would make fun of me and would hesitate to include me in their games. People would not spend more than a few minutes in my company. They of course could not ignore me completely, for I was still the daughter of their chief Dasharaja. I tried not to let this hurt affect me, but it was a very difficult thing to do. But all of this was soon about to change with the arrival of the sage. In my teenage years, my father gave me the job of transporting passengers along the river. One day, an aged rishi came to the banks of the river where I waited for passengers. He looked at me strangely. Although I was a little uncomfortable, I was afraid of offending such a great man. I asked the rishi if he wanted to cross the river and he said yes. I agreed to take him across and requested him to be seated in my boat. A few minutes passed as I swiftly rowed towards his destination. We were now away from the banks and there was no other boat in sight. The rishi, who had continued looking at me strangely all this while, asked me to stop rowing. I complied. He said, "Maiden, I have travelled far and wide across Bharatavarsha, but I am yet to see a woman as beautiful and as desirable as you. I want to unite with you this very minute. I must have you right now. Will you give me yourself, maiden?" I was shocked and horrified that such a revered sage had uttered such words. For a few seconds I could not speak, and then I replied, "O revered sage, please do not speak to me so. I am just a girl, not even married yet. I do not even have the power of resisting your advances if you take me by force. Please release me and find somebody else to quench your desire. I have heard that rishis, when angry, put terrible curses on those who anger them. I do not want my family to perish by your rage. But I cannot bring myself to offer my body to you, for I wish to be married someday and have a family of my own. And who will marry me if I have already been taken by another man? Please spare me, rishi." I cried, beginning to sob. The rishi's face showed compassion at my words, but the desire did not leave his eyes. He said, "Maiden, I do not wish to force myself upon you, and nor do I wish to curse your family or threaten you with a curse to unite with me. It is true that I desire you very much. Now that lust has entered my heart and you are in my thoughts, until we unite, I will never be rid of you in my mind. And if my mind is not unencumbered, I will be unable to continue my tapas, my penance. Surely we can come to an agreement that benefits both of us." Startled, I asked, "Agreement? What sort of agreement?" The sage smiled and replied, "Maiden, you mentioned wanting to marry and having a family, and you are worried that no one would want you if you were taken by another man. Well, that is easily solved. My decades of spiritual progress have granted me many siddhis, divine powers. I can easily make it so that once we are done uniting, you regain your virginity immediately. And if you were to become pregnant with my child, then once you deliver my baby, your virginity will be restored to you. How does that sound? I thought for a moment. I looked around and realized there was no way out of this accursed situation. We were far from land and there was no help nearby. And I did not fully trust the sage's assurance that he would not curse me or my family. And I decided that I would share the sage's bed. But if I were forced to do so, I would ensure that my future was safe and secure. So I addressed the sage. O Rishi, if I were to agree with your terms, there is something else that I desire. I have lived with this bodily stench for many years. I do not want to suffer with this any longer. Could you use your siddhi to get rid of the stench of a fish so I may smell good for my future suitor? The sage laughed. Of course, maiden, he said. I can certainly transform you from Matsya Gandha to Yojana Gandha, the one whose sweet bodily fragrance can be smelled for many kilometers away. And I'll do you one better. The son you shall have from our union will change the course of Bharatavarsha. I will make you one of the most famous and prominent mothers of our Bharata history. How does that sound? Will you come to me now, maiden? I took a deep breath and nodded. O king, I don't want to speak of our time together, for it lasted hours. Through his magical powers, the sage created an island that was blanketed by fog, where we could anchor the boat and unite, undisturbed by any. After he was done, we got back into the boat, and he asked me to drop him to his destination. As he disembarked, I asked him, Sage, when will I stop smelling? The rishi turned and said, But you have already stopped smelling, maiden. Didn't you notice? And with a shock, I realized that yes, I was no longer smelling of fish, but had the fragrance of flowers. Happy? Asked the sage. I nodded slowly. Then I cried out, Rishi, what about your other 2 boons? When will that take effect? And should I become pregnant, what should I tell my child when he asks who his father is? The rishi smiled and said, Those boons will take effect in due time, maiden. Never fear. As for telling the child who his father is, tell him, my name is Rishi Parashara, the son of Rishi Shakti and the grandson of Rishi Vashishta, the Saptarshi, and his wife Arundhati. So saying, he left. Satyavati paused and closed her eyes, recollecting the times past. She opened her eyes, looked at Shantanu and said, So you see, King, how my encounter with Rishi Parashara was life-altering? Everything he has said has come to pass. Shantanu felt horrified and heartbroken for the girl standing in front of him. He asked quietly, And your son, what happened to him? Satyavati smiled and responded, My son is a truly remarkable young man. True to his father's words, it did not take long for his genius to show. He is now wandering around Bharatavarsha, doing penance and studying the sacred texts. His name is Krishna Dvaipayana, the dark one born on the island. But you may know him as Veda Vyasa, the revered sage who is compiling the Vedas, our most sacred of texts. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, like my video and subscribe to my channel. I'm Nisha Prakash and this was Bite Size Bharata, where you hear tiny tales from a grand epic. I'll see you next time on Tales in Text.